Before we get into today's episode, I want to share something that's helped transform my daily routine. I've started using Bob, the refillable bottle-free body wash designed specifically for men. If you're still using bottled shower gel, you're literally washing money down the drain. Let's face it, you always use more than you need, and half of it just slips through your hands before it touches your skin. Bob combines a reusable applicator with exfoliating bristles and the world's first refillable body wash bars, formulated to match a man's skin pH of 5.5. All this means you get a deep clean with zero wastage. It's better for your skin, better for your wallet, and better for the planet. Plus, it's travel proof. Just pop on the lid and your Bob is ready to go wherever you are. For an exclusive 15% offer on your first order, head over to welcometobob.com and use the code meaningofmen15 at checkout. Welcome back to The Meaning of Men. I'm your host, Simeon Atkins, and today we're exploring how creative outlets can be a lifeline for men struggling to open up. I'm joined by poet and author Drew Horner, who discusses his own mental health journey and how writing helped him through some of the darkest chapters of his life. Drew also shares poems from his book, My Life in Pieces, giving us a raw and moving insight into the inner battle so many men face, but often don't talk about. This is a real reminder that just putting your feelings into words in any capacity can be the first step towards healing. Let's get into it. Drew, if someone listening only had 30 seconds to understand who you are, what would you tell them?
Well, I'd say I'm a voiceover artist, actor, self-published poet, one part of a movie-esque podcast called Rage Whale, spoken word enthusiast, mental health advocate, and a truth detective.
What do you hope that people take away from the conversation that we're going to have today?
Well, I hope our conversation is insightful and it has lots of little kind of sprinkles of nuggets of information and I guess, like, I don't know, hints and tips of dealing with certain things based on, you know, the complexities of life, I guess, in a way. That maybe something either yourself or I say helps people see a situation that they might be facing down the road and they have a different way of dealing with it, maybe.
I think what I'm excited to get into today, we're going to be focusing a lot around the poetry work that you're doing. And I think we had this discussion last week around the fact that there are so many different ways for men to be able to express their emotions. And I think sometimes we get caught in this cycle of feeling like it has to be a one-on-one conversation where we're having these really intimate, deep conversations with each other. But I think there's so many different ways to be able to express and get out what you need before maybe you get onto that stage, if ever. And poetry is one of these things that is not something I'd really ever considered until we'd started having our conversation. And I think that it's, you know, from some of the stuff you're saying, and I know the insights you're going to share today, I think it will open people up in a way where they think, actually, you know, whether it's poetry or maybe some other form of communication, there are other ways that you can sort of get and process the feelings that you need to. So personally, for me, I'm really excited to get into that with you in a bit more detail. And we're going to start the episode off in a pretty unique way, something we haven't done before. We're going to kick off with a poem, one of your poems. And I know that you've chosen one to get us started today.
Yeah, this is from my book, My Life in Pieces. And this piece is called Don't Hide Your Pains Inside. Four walls, black as sin. A soul on the edge struggles within. The truth trapped inside like paint dries as the darkness slowly sets in. This is where the nightmares begin. We see the cries for help across their skin, but do we jump in? Do we take the time to do what's right? Or do we leave them alone to fight that fight? Invisible wars are doing more damage than we can ever know. How many wrongs till we do what's right? That's just the way it goes. Cold bodies on slabs, labels now on their wrists and ankles as they no longer use their big toes. Demons we bear in mind tally up their scores as the body count soars from so many souls that are sore. Why are so many lives taken so often? What is all this killing for? They tried as we cried, scars on their flesh as their demons subside. But let's not be blind. This is happening all the time. Too many souls taken in the blink of an eye. Tell me why. Why is darkness so heavy to hold? Too difficult to tell another living soul? An impossible load? Too much pain to behold? Searching for answers in a dark room like pirates search for gold? But this isn't something new. This is old. People taking their lives and leaving a warm bed cold. I've known people drowning in their dark, looking for any kind of light, a matchstick flick to create some hope, even a spark. But it's just the start. Words are their weapons against the dark. But it's hard when fear sews their lips tight, looking for the right words to tell someone your pain is the real fight. Suicide is a decision that the hurting decide. But we need those people to pick a different side to suicide, to tighten the seat strap on that roller coaster ride so they can survive. People who have been on the edge with nothing left, yet they saved themselves coming back from off the ledge. An inspiring role model to speak the truth that was never said. The demons win when we stay silent. Speak your pain and truth and disarm the tyrant. Too much time is spent entrapped in emotional cement. Concrete problems, or so it seems, but those foundations can be broken, and in those cracks grow positive seeds. A nightmare dies as life blossoms into beautiful dreams. A life that seemed out of reach is now in your hands as you find your way. And now your words can inspire and teach, reaching out to those lost in the dark sea, drowning in the deep end of their misery, as they make that important discovery. A chain breaker that can tell others how to break free and live a life full of wonder, entranced by Mother Nature's flawless beauty.
What made you choose that poem out of interest?
I think it's kind of like what we were, I guess kind of like, it feels like an amalgamation of potentially this episode, really. The idea of, the burden of holding things in, the idea of we shouldn't be ashamed. I think there's a kind of profound shame to our dealings in life and things that we carry on our rucksacks, metaphorically, all the things we've gone through, and we're like, oh, I don't want to show anyone that. Oh, I God forbid what they think of me as that person. But then the more as I get older, you start to realize that more and more people are going through things. And I feel like if there is some sense of transparency, we can dilute the load that we all go through, and that burden doesn't have to be quite so heavy. And we can break through that shame and go, do you know what? This is me, man. This is the raw flesh, blood, warts and all, as they say. But for every situation we manage to overcome, that kind of makes us who we are, really.
It's interesting, that rucksack analogy. I was actually using that with someone the other day. I think it can feel like over the course of your life or a certain period that you are wearing this rucksack, and there are just these small stones or small rocks that just gradually build up, and at first you don't notice it, and it feels like it's getting heavier and heavier, and at some point, if you're not dealing with that, the rucksack will just become too heavy, and you just can't carry on. I think it's just such a great analogy because it can sometimes, I think, be one big life-changing occurrence that happens, but I think a lot of times, and I can actually relate to this myself with certain things, it is just those small stones and those small rocks that just keep getting added to your backpack month over month, year over year, and then one day it just becomes so heavy that you just can't go on, basically.
Yeah, that's mad, man. I mean, what are the kind of chances of that kind of fortuitous synchronicity there? Well, yeah, it's also funny with the rucksack as well, because there's two ways of looking at it as well, because my mum mentioned the rucksack to me at one point talking about grief, and it's the idea that after a while sometimes you forget you're wearing the rucksack, and that's also a strange thing as well, that it's you've carried something for so long that you forget the straps are there, you forget all of these different rocks and things that you're carrying. You're just kind of focusing on the mountain or where you're trying to get to, and maybe part of grief and loss is something that we carry, because we always carry the ones that have sadly left us, aspects of them anyway.
When did you first discover poetry as an outlet for your emotions and a way for you to be able to process and communicate them in that way?
So it's a good question, man. You're a master of questions. So interestingly, it happened during lockdown because I think for a while I was a closet poet, which sounds really strange, but I think it was the idea of being a male and writing my feelings in a book. And I remember during drama school when I was going through some really difficult times and questioning whether or not I was going to carry on or if I was going to give up and fail, I went to a little area upstairs in the old costume department. I just write a little bit of poetry, and I didn't know it was potentially poetry at the time. It was just spilling moments and feelings and thoughts, and I just know that it felt really good when I came back down. I think a lot of people were wondering what I was doing. They're like, "Did you just go for a cigarette or something?" Or like, "Why do you seem so much like calmer or whatever it is?" And I was like, it was my own little secret safe space. And then life gets in the way, and you try to pursue things, and poetry just went to one side, and I didn't do it for ages. And it wasn't until lockdown where we were given our time back, essentially, because we're always trying to pay bills, do jobs, deal with the responsibilities of life, and whatever role we play, whether we're a father, it's we've all got different roles to play that take up our time. And I think during that frightening time, it was like I say, when the world went crazy, art kept me sane. And I just for some reason all of this kind of poetry just came out of me, talking about the state of the world, the virus, the not knowing if the arts are going to continue, the concerns for people, the corruption of governments. So all of these kind of crazy things just were kind of snowballing out of me. Not to mention the fact that I was fighting COVID. I got the Delta version, which was the really serious one where people were dying. I mean, people were dying everywhere, sadly, in lots of different countries. And my wife was watching the news, and she was really worried because, the body count was just soaring. And she knew that I had this illness, and she was sleeping downstairs, and I was in the room, and I honestly thought I was going to die. Like, it was a really messed up time. It was quite a psychological impact on me when it takes away your breathing. And to be honest, I don't ever think I've ever fully got back to 100% after having COVID, which is really scary that it kind of leaves its kind of mark on you. Um, but I'm really grateful that during that time I was able to write a lot of poetry and work with my friend Michael Felton, who created a lot of the artwork. We created a Tales of the Nook Instagram page, and at the time there was a wonderful poetry community because people just used to kind of like pitch in and listen to poetry or share their own pieces, or they'd send in a piece and somebody else would read it through one of the lives, and it was a wonderful environment to be part of. And I said to my mate Michael, I was like, well, look, maybe we could publish a book. Like, once this, if this lockdown ever, lets up, then let's create a book. And he created the artwork for it based on a photo by my friend Kevin Scullion. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say. I was very, very fortunate that I've actually got something in that time to be able to show for it. Yeah.
And I think that when you were describing earlier around the release that you had through poetry, I think again it's important to emphasize that it doesn't necessarily have to be poetry. I think there might be some people listening thinking, well, I'm not particularly creative. I mean, I'm certainly not, I wouldn't be able to write any kind of poetry if I tried, or if I did, it would
You
be
never know. You never know.
well, you never know, but I think I'll save the world from that torture. But I think that it's lovely to be able to explore in this episode poetry specifically. But I think what I want people listening to keep in the top of their minds is it can be any kind of expressive writing, journaling, or I think you put it really nicely. Actually, it was just kind of getting your feelings on paper, and it sort of it manifested itself in poetry for you, but it could manifest itself in it, like art or anything for other people. And I think it's just kind of like having that mentality to just give it a go and see what happens, really.
Yeah, yeah. Well, 100%. I think it's interesting you talk about an outlet for something, because I think anything creative, like, talking for obviously from the point of view of men, I think if two men were building a shed and then painting it, that's some sense of what they're going through. You can put your feelings and emotions into something that you're building or creating. It doesn't have to be like you're saying, like someone sat on a couch and they're opening up their bare soul, and you're like, oh, I'm fully exposed. I think writing's an incredible tool. I think it's a beautiful way of becoming intimate with yourself, and you can you can have these discussions with no one, but
Mm,
you're privy to these discussions, if that makes sense. And
mm,
sometimes it's just about getting it out of here and
mm,
onto something else, whatever that may be. Like you're saying, sculpting something, building something, painting something, creating something, writing something. I think I always used to crack a joke saying, if the demons aren't in here, it's better that they're somewhere elsewhere, or at least they become part of a kind of creative fuel that I can use in some way, in a positive way, anyway. Um, but yeah, I think with writing, something I always found was there would be times where, like, if I had an argument with a friend, or maybe not even a friend, like someone at work or something, and there was something I really wish I said to them and I didn't say it, and it was just bugging me and it's kind of clawing away at me. So I'd write it down. I'd pretend I'm having that conversation with them. I'd write down what I wished I said, and then I potentially say it out loud. And even though they can't hear it, I'd feel better for it, because I feel like I was able to say something. Because this is a weird thing. I noticed that the times where I didn't say something to the people that I felt needed to hear it, because it was important to get my feelings across for a certain situation, or how they made me feel in that moment. And that every time I didn't voice my true feelings, a day or so later, I'd start to get a sore throat. And you can look it up, man. It's mad. If you don't if you don't express, or it's certain parts of the body, if you don't release those moments or those emotions, they start to build up in the cells, and it's quite profound. That's why I think with Chinese medicine, they talk about the certain part of the body that hurts or is unwell. If you eat that part of the body from another animal, potentially it can help, which is profound. Like if you look into Chinese medicine, and I just think it's fascinating that if we stop ourselves, our throats start to hurt. So it's like that manifests itself physically in our bodies because we didn't utter the truth, you know.
That's so interesting. And I think that, as you were saying there, missing the opportunity to say something to someone, I think you might feel that, well, if I'm not actually saying it to them, then what's the point? But I think what you were saying there makes sense in terms of just being able to get it out of your head and somewhere else onto a piece of paper or whatever it might be is obviously going to be beneficial for sure. You were talking about the book, Life in Pieces. I'd be really interested to know what that title specifically means to you.
So it's a funny one, isn't it? Because it I like it. I think it's got many reasons behind that title, and I hope that if someone purchased the book themselves, they could find their own reason behind why they think it is that. Um, But for me personally, my life in pieces, it's the idea that as poets, when we write a poetry or a piece of poetry, we call them pieces. So it's the idea that it's my life so far in pieces. It's pieces of my work. And when I return to those poems, it kind of gives me glimmers and fragments of where I was at that time in my life, and have I progressed or have I learnt from certain lessons in life. And it's kind of like a discovery, really. And I always think that we we can feel broken at times and worried that we might never recover. But I like the idea that if we were a jigsaw and that those pieces are out there, if we can find a way back to those pieces, we can rebuild ourselves. And there's a beautiful quote by Ernest Hemingway, and he says, "We're all broken. That's how the light gets in." And I think that is such a beautiful quote. And again, I think going back to, it's either I think it's Chinese. If something breaks, they rebuild it back together with gold. And I think it's beautiful that you can see something that was never damaged, just looks plain and ordinary. And I don't think any of us walking through life will ever have a moment where we're not damaged physically, mentally, emotionally. But the idea that we can build ourselves back together and like with those little bits of kind of invisible gold or whatever it is. And there's actually a festival, man, which is called Gold Festival, right? This is beautiful. I don't know where it takes place, but wherever people have scars where they've survived certain difficult, frightening, traumatic moments, they go to that festival and everyone paints gold on those scars and those moments. And it's about just embracing the beauty of you're still here. A scar, you might think, oh, it's ugly and all this thing, but it's a beautiful reminder that you're still here. You've overcome something. You can only be a warrior if you take on something and you get past it. And that's, yeah, I think that's the journey we're all going on. I want to continue to try and, become a warrior and deal with, the battles that life is going to throw our way, because it's never going to be smooth sailing. So we've got to prep our boats for what is coming. So
what I quite like about that analogy as well around pieces is it's this idea of just rebuilding ourselves and constantly, we're all going through this journey, and there's always going to be times where we are getting broken down and we need to be rebuilt. And I think that's just such a nice way to think about it, and building back better and stronger than you were before.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, jumping off that, literally that building bit, I was saying that this is just another kind of analogy or something, but the idea that a storm that damages a building, right, when they then rebuild it, it's twice as strong. So it's ready to take on whatever the future throws at it. We can just strengthen the foundation of something. And yeah, I think flaws are what makes us beautiful. Flaws are the stories we can tell people. Flaws are the triumphs and tribulations of life. How we can overcome things and be inspirations to one another. If you read a lot of biographies, you see celebrities or sports enthusiasts or all of these amazing people that we call celebrities. And if you look through their life, they've gone through some serious kind of storms and difficulties, and how they've overcome that is that's just incredible, man. That is fuel for the soul. When you go, if they did that and they can get through this, then, I've got no excuse.
I always think as well, when I look at people like that, would they be where they are today had they not gone through those trials and tribulations and been able to come back better and stronger? I think that's always quite a nice way to look at it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Well, it's that idea that, it's like someone says, if you could change anything from your past, right? And I was like, do you know what? Maybe I wouldn't, because maybe I wouldn't be who I am today. And it's like that idea that if we're fortunate enough to take the lessons from those difficult moments or those failures or whatever we decide to call them, then they can actually make you better. A little thing I was saying was the best version of you is the other side of your comfort zone. That's what I found, that when I've really tested myself through really difficult circumstances, you go, wow, I'm more resilient than I realize. I'm stronger than I give myself credit for. And then rather than looking ahead and going, oh, but I still want to get here, or I still need to be here, or people are saying, why aren't I here? If you look back and go, yeah, but look what the hell I've got through. I've literally gone through hell and back, and I'm still here. I'm still here, So
I think that's a great way of looking at it. I mean, I'm definitely someone that can get stuck in the past with things and think, why didn't I do this? If I could speak to myself 5 or 10 years ago, I would have told myself this, that, and the other, and I would have been here rather than there. And I think it's just so easy to get caught in that trap of doing that. And obviously, there's nothing you can do to change that. Whereas if you can try and reframe it to, well, if I hadn't gone through that journey, then I wouldn't have had some of the good things that have come into my life as well. I think that's obviously a more productive way to do it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you think of the polarity of life, right? Everything is polar. So you've got day, night, heads, tails, all of these different kind of things in life. And you have to have the good with the bad. And I think if we can come to terms with the fact that this is a lovely time we're having, and you're like, this is lovely in a certain moment in your life, but just know that there are going to be difficult times ahead, and that's fine, because that's the kind of array of experience. Because if you only ever experienced one thing, that's not a true life. And there's a lot of kind of profound philosophers that say that, like, the multitude of pains we have to experience to go through as in the human condition, if we can find the beauty in that. Not that I'm saying go off and hurt yourself and put yourself in crazy situations. I don't mean that at all. I mean the things that naturally occur or organically happen in your path and in your life. But if you can go, do you know what? This is just the beauty of being alive. This is one of those experiences. Yeah.
For people listening that might not be poets themselves, can you explain to us what is it about poetry specifically that makes it such a powerful tool for self-expression?
I think it's the idea, right, that when you potentially write something, it's unfiltered. It's not been tampered with. It's literally coming from you and not bypassing so many different opinions and people. It's just your heart, your passion, your mind, your thoughts, your truth straight to a page. And it also allows us to truly feel like Ethan Hawke said something amazing. He says, not everyone will appreciate poetry until they've been kind of thrown into the rocks of life. Because if you're having a great time and everything and life's brilliant and you don't need to worry about all that. And interestingly, I didn't find poetry till I was a lot older potentially, but you don't need it until you start to go through things. And then when you open up a book on poetry and you read something, it's just profound. It's almost like art on a wall, but done in words, painting with words, right? And the fact that can tap into somebody's emotion and make somebody feel something, whether or not it's the same thing that the writer intended or something completely different. And also the beauty of poetry is something that it has a wonderful kind of return quality, or at least that's what I always try to do with mine. I like to have a kind of ambiguity that when you return to it, you can always find something new in a line or in a phrase or in a stanza, that it feels like it's always evolving. You read it when you're in one mindset and it makes you feel this way, but you return to it when you're in a different mindset and it makes you see it this way. And yeah, man, it allows us to, I don't know, like document the world in a way that's so pure. People could easily get offended if you wrote a tweet or you put something on a post and people are like, well, how dare you, blah, blah, say something like this. And like, especially in this world, like we're scared to say anything for fear of upsetting people, right? Or being cancelled in this crazy kind of culture at the moment. But if you write it in a poem, it's got a very different kind of connotation to it, because people will just be like, whoa, that's quite profound what they're saying. And then it's more kind of like, this is how I feel. It's not like saying, this is what I reckon. What do you reckon? It's kind of you're just putting it out there, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a discussion or a kind of fire back. It's like the idea that in a museum or an exhibition that you've just got that placard, you got that little moment there that describes the painting. Whether or not you want to read it or not, you could just look at the painting and take from it what you want. But they've got that plaque there giving you a little insight into something. And I feel that poetry is people's kind of own interpretation of a situation in life. Whether it's something they've seen, it's a moment they've been through, or it's something on the news, or it's a piece of nature, or it's an expression of love. I think it's really important. I think poetry plays a really important role in life, and it's beautiful to see more and more people are becoming poets. Or like you said, maybe more and more people are just writing and putting stuff out there because, better to get it out than keep it in,
When does it turn to poetry? So when does it turn from just kind of writing and documenting something to actually looking at that and thinking, okay, that is poetry? What does that process look like?
That's a great question, dude. Great question. I think it's kind of all the different tools that whoever created poetry in the beginning of time, as it were, they came up with things called like metaphors, analogies, similes, alliteration. And when you put in all of these cool little tools, it's like you start to kind of carve away at something. So say it was just me writing an extract of something in my day, that could just be like a nice piece of wood, say, right? But then as soon as you start to use metaphors and analogies, alliteration, you start to kind of carve away at it, and it gives it a kind of different shape and a different feel. I do a lot of rhyming poetry, but it doesn't have to rhyme. But there's something about my past when I was a kid that I used to love rhymes. I used to get so excited to go, oh, what word are they going to use that rhymes with that next bit? And that kind of inner child gets so excited to hear it. And I think that's why hip hop and rap is so cool, because like the idea of play on words and how clever they are. It's like Eminem is like, yes, Eminem is an amazing hip hop artist, but he's also a profoundly, incredibly talented poet. Like his wordplay and his storytelling is just next level, man. It's like, that is such an inspiration, because I tried to infuse a little bit of kind of hip hop esque style through my work, and I think rap actually stands for rhythm and poetry, which is incredible to think that, you know, when poetry gets a bad press, it's like some of those cool tracks you're getting down to is actually poetry. And it's the same with like The Weeknd, who I absolutely adore, that artist. He's a poet, man. It's like some of the best music you've ever heard is poetry on a much higher level, that's probably appreciated more because it's out there in the ether, on, you know, being played through the radio, being seen on TV, all these things. Whereas a lot of poetry tends to either be in a book on a shelf collecting dust, or, you know, it's like small groups of people huddled together for open mic events. But those moments, if you ever get a chance to go to an open mic event, it's just incredible, man, to see someone in front of you just kind of like, you know, spilling their soul, or taking you on a journey through potentially rhyming and all these different kind of tools, and people are clicking away. And I never knew what clicking was, but it was like the appreciation, like you're tapping into it. Because I thought it was like, because clicking has a bad idea, because people click and go, excuse me, can I get a red wine, please? but clicking is like, yeah, I'm really feeling this. I'm really with you. And sometimes if they like a certain line or a bar, they'll be like, they'll say it again. And then you'd have to re-say that whole little section. And then it's just the idea of people so in love with words. We're almost like addicts for words. It's crazy, but it's such a beautiful thing. Yeah. Yeah, man.
I love this analogy of when you were saying carving out things like metaphors and rhymes, because it gives it this feel of something that you're really creating. And I think for people listening, that will probably resonate quite nicely, because it might just feel like it's something that you're just throwing onto a page, but there really is this process of building and, as you said there, like carving and creating. And I think that's a really powerful way to look at it, because you're building something potentially, like almost a legacy, if you will, or a picture and a journey into your soul and like who you are fundamentally as a person. I think that's a really wonderful way to look at it.
Oh yeah, no, thanks, man. Yeah, but you're right. It is quite revealing, man. Like, I think that's why a lot of people are scared of poetry in places, because what you're putting out there, people go, "Oh, that's seriously a certain amount of you in there," and you're like, "Yeah, man, that's a whole host of me in there." Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, there's a real kind of transparency and I guess bravery in a sense, and a little bit of courage, because yeah, you're putting yourself, yeah, out there, man. Really.
Hi everyone, I want to take a moment to shout out Apex Everest, an incredible organisation and partner of the show who are pushing the limits of human resilience. Imagine this, climbing the equivalent of Mount Everest, but right here in the UK, by summiting the Helvellyn mountain 9 times in just 48 hours. But Apex isn't just about the challenge, it's the chance to be part of a year-round, vibrant community dedicated to unlocking your true potential. Whether you're looking to push your own limits or you're part of a team wanting to build an unshakable bond, this experience will stick with you for life. So if you're ready to conquer your Everest and be part of something special, check out apexeverest.com to find out more. Have you ever written anything that scared you in particular?
It's a great question. I've written stuff that's probably scared other people. And, probably my parents worried and be like, do we need to put you into some kind of like, counseling session or like what's going on here? Um, I think it's interesting because I'm drawn to drama and conflict and kind of darker stories because I'm fortunate that in my life is pretty light and beautiful, and I have my wife and my cats, and I've got my I go to my job, and I don't have many kind of turmoils or crazy things going on. So it's like the idea of being able to paint a picture of those harder, more difficult circumstances that people go through. I think that's why like stage plays and movies and TV series are so fascinating for us, because we get to kind of people watch without it looking creepy, and we're seeing life through somebody else's lens, and it's fascinating to see the hardships that people go through, or the way that people try to hide things from loved ones or their family or strangers, or how people might you know lie, cheat, steal, how we're all trying to do certain things to manipulate a situation for ourselves, for our own wants, or what are those characters' wants and needs, and all those different things that drive them. And yeah, it's I have gone through a lot of darkness, because I use the analogy as well, like because other poets have written to me and gone, when are you going to get out of that dark phase? And I was like, almost like I was Van Gogh and it was my blue period, and I chopped my ear off or something with a pen. But yeah, I was saying like I've gone through a lot of dark and difficult times, and I'm grateful to say that I'm the other end of that. And that's how I think when people pick up a book and can read it, there's a lot of kind of authenticity in what I'm saying. I'm not just writing it because it's trending or it's exciting. I'm writing it because I know what that road looks like. I know, what those walls make you feel. Especially how those thoughts kind of become a kind of puppeteer master, and can really manipulate your world, and yeah, almost like you're walking through a kind of psychological thriller, but it's actually your life. And that's the really brutal side of mental health, and yeah, mental illness in certain ways. And I think they said 1 in 4 people will go through it. So again, it's that idea that this is relatable, because at some point there was a beautiful thing that someone said, that mental health, panic attacks, and anxiety isn't weakness. It's the fact that you were strong for so long. And that, when I heard that, I almost cried the first time I heard that, because it's true. It's like there are so many people out there that have been strong for so long that their body is taking a toll on their body. And now they hide in the shadows because they feel weak, because they feel vulnerable and all those things. But it's like, I'd probably rather feel vulnerable than be numb. So the idea that you're truly feeling every moment of your life, you will never take anything for granted. Because when it comes to the end of your life, at least you felt fully without, holding anything back. I think that's a kind of beautiful thing in a way. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I agree, and I think that, and even maybe reframing it slightly, I've heard people talking about mental fitness rather than mental health, and having this idea that it's something to work on and be happy to work on, like you would going to the gym.
yeah, yeah,
That's sort of like that mental side, and I think just reframing it in that way, as you were saying, like not looking at it necessarily as a weakness, but something that you can work on, and the reality is you are going to be working on it for most of your life. Like most of us will be doing that.
yeah, dude, 100%, man. And it's like that idea that I always say it's almost like an invisible battle, which was kind of in the poem that I read earlier. The idea that if you've got a broken arm, you can see it's in a sling, so people get a sense of it. Oh, that person damaged their arm. Oh, I wonder how they did that. Oh gosh, I hope their arm gets better. But when it's up here, you can't tell what's going on in here. Like we can't pierce someone's skin and see into their brain. And even if we could, it would just be a brain moving. You can't see the visions that people are going through, or the difficult scenarios that they're building in their minds. And it's like that's why I think it's great that you were saying about going to the gym, or I feel like everyone has their own form of mindfulness, whether it's, again, going back to that, building something, going for a walk, walking your dog, um, listening to music, going to the gym. There's a hot playing instruments, like painting, coloring in. They even said there's like color therapy now. So like people are buying coloring books, and they're just doing coloring books, and it's just very calming and just kind of helps you relax and kind of just deal with a lot of stuff that's going on. And I think it's beautiful that there's more and more of these things are becoming available to people and aren't shunned away. So like they're even there's adverts for men saying I've got a journal now, which is great because, again, it seems so strange that in the world a journal seemed like it was a ladies thing, right? And I think it's beautiful that it doesn't matter what sex you are, or who you are, or how you would like to identify yourself as. The fact that there are tools and things that you can use to help unload the burdens of life, because life is such a complex and strange thing, man. It really is.
Has poetry been a way of you finding meaning and purpose in your life?
It's I think, like, it's like they're saying, poetry is cheaper than therapy, which is so ironic that it rhymes, and it's a beautiful line in itself, but people use it all the time. But it's so true, because not everyone can afford therapy. And I think therapy can be a really important tool, and can be necessary for certain people that are going through difficult things, that if they feel like they can't reach out to members of their family or close friends, it's really good to have a conversation about things that are concerning you going on inside, or things that you've gone through in your past that you haven't dealt with yet, but it's coming back like a tidal wave on you, and you're like, I really need to get on top of this, man, or find a way to have some kind of buoyancy so I don't drown in all this. And I think therapy is a great way through that. And poetry, interestingly, started off as my self help in a way, and but what I started to realize is, from the feedback of others, that the pieces I were writing were starting to affect other people, but in a kind of positive way. Like, somebody somebody reached out to me and said, I bought your book because I've got a really couple of heavy 2 weeks coming up. And I was like, oh, okay. But it was a nice feeling that, one, they could open up, be a bit transparent, that they said that they've got a couple of difficult weeks ahead, but they're going to buy my book in the hope that it can help them kind of navigate through that. And I was like, that's such an honor. That's such a beautiful thing, that if these words that have got me through certain things can help other people through certain things. So yeah, I guess in a way, it shaped my life, because I'm continuing to tell stories that can hopefully inspire, uplift, or allow people to connect. Because I think when we go through certain things, when we feel like we're the only ones going through it, or we're alone in our darkness, it makes it 10 times harder. But I think when we realize that we're not the only ones going through things, and that sense of relatability, it can help us to not feel alien. Um, yeah.
I think that relatability piece is key, because there are times where you do want answers to questions, but equally, just being able to listen to someone or read something that someone's written that speaks to you, and you can see that you're not the only person that's thought that way or gone through that, is equally as powerful. Like, I've definitely had that myself. And something like poetry might not have necessarily been something that I would have thought about before, but I think just from this conversation, it's clear that that can be a really great way to be able to both express your emotions, but also understand what other people are going through as well. So I think, just in closing, I'd love to give people listening who might be thinking, I love the idea of this, but I've never been someone that's written, I've never been someone that's journaled, let alone been a poet, or written any kind of poetry. But I do see the benefit, or I think I understand the benefit of at least using this as a way to express my emotions. What advice would you give to people just to get started with it really, and maybe start to build some of the skills and tools that can help them write and express in a way that's actually going to be beneficial for them?
Well, I'd you can either use a moment that you're still trying to deal with yourself, whether it was an argument with a friend or family member or something a little bit more complex. You can kind of start writing that out. Whether it's what was said to you, whether it's what you wished you'd said, creating your own kind of conversation, or describing how it felt when they were saying that certain thing to you. Like maybe when someone's having to go at you, like I felt like I was shrinking. The walls felt like they were closing in. Um, just to be able to write what you physically felt or what you mentally felt at a time is a great way. Sometimes people don't know what to write as well. I think sometimes you can listen to some music. I think inspiration is an incredible thing. So if you're listening to some music or there's something on TV or there's something on the news and you can write about something because sometimes we're connected to everything in life because we're all the same species and we're all going to go through similar things. Just because something's happening in another country to another bunch of people, they're still human. Do you know what I mean? They still bleed the same. It's like we, in life, we create so many different borders. I mean, metaphorically and literally, unfortunately. And we just divided the world up and we've created so many segregations rather than going, why can't we all be one? Because we're all good. We are one, essentially. And learn from one another rather than be afraid because they're different or they've got a different way of life or they've got a different religion or any of those things. We shouldn't have those things as to separate us. And the reason I say that is that say that there's something going on in the news and you start writing something about that, you'll have your own reflections. It will reflect something in you that somebody else is going through. Because yeah, we've all got nervous systems. Do you know what I mean? So we can all fully feel and hopefully relate and empathize with other living souls. That's why in movies, when a character dies, we feel it. Even though it's a character and it's written and it's part of a story, it still hits us because it's something, sadly, we all have to kind of deal with, or we've all dealt with, or we've all lost someone. And again, it's that relatability. Yeah, that's always a good way. Or people watching. For a long time, I used to just I'd be at home and I'd look through the window, or I'd go onto a bench and I'd watch people. I'd watch couples, or I'd watch the old person on the bus shelter doing a crossword, and all the buses that went by, but they never got on the bus. And I was like, were they waiting to go on a bus, or do they just like that bench, or have they forgotten? You know, have they got amnesia? Like you don't know. But all of these stories, they start to build ideas, and then you can kind of create a narrative to start writing about something, or something that you've been through, a memory that it hasn't gone. It's constantly coming back in the back of your mind. It's like, maybe write that. That's a great place to start. Why is it still there? Like, has it still got lessons to kind of, pass on to you? I always feel like we either meet someone for a reason or a lesson. And I think it's the same with certain moments in life, that those difficulties are actually there to potentially make us stronger, and hidden within those difficulties are the tools we need to help us later down the line. But just like a computer game, if you haven't figured out what's hidden in that little moment, you need to go back and see what tools were in that kind of dark room or that box of trauma or emotion, and go, I've got the tools I need for that next little bit. I think it's really important to kind of, I do a lot of reflection, and I know you do, because I hear a lot in your podcast. So you go, I'm going to go away and reflect on this, and I think that's beautiful, and I think that's such an amazing thing to be able to do, and it's a great tool to have, because yeah, I think when we reflect, we can really start to kind of find the the essence or the DNA of something and start to kind of break it down and understand it on a deeper level.
I think that idea of getting inspiration from other places is really good, because I know when I've tried to journal myself sometimes, like you said, you sometimes don't know what to say, or you don't know maybe how to express it. But I think just maybe listening to other things and gathering inspiration elsewhere might trigger something in you to either maybe directly from that write about something, or it might trigger something that was inside you that you hadn't realized or didn't know how to articulate. Because I think, yeah, sometimes just starting from like a blank page with no inspiration can be quite difficult.
Yeah.
So maybe just looking elsewhere can certainly be helpful.
Oh, dude, 100%, man. Yeah. I think that's where a lot of writer's block and things like that come from. The idea of a blank page is really daunting. Um, but that's why, like, I think notes helps actually. That's this one thing, because obviously, ironically, a lot of the writing I talk about is like phone addiction and social media and all these things, but I write a lot of poetry on my notes in my phone. And I think that's a really cool thing to do. Like if you just have an idea, just start writing little notes, just like little thoughts, little moments, like the apple fell from a tree. Wow, that was quite profound. What's that mean? The apple fell from a tree. And then you just start putting little things together in your little notes. And then when you come to the page, you refer to your notes. So then it's kind of not an empty page, because you've got ideas to start to build something, rather than coming to an empty page with potentially an empty brain at that point. Like, oh, I don't know. So I think notes is a really, really cool thing. And sometimes little pieces I've put in my notes, I've used for different poems for where it feels right. And it's almost a bit like Jenga. It's like getting, no, not Jenga, Tetris. It's like trying to get the right shapes and make them slot in. And that's what I think's one of the fun and beautiful parts of poetry for me, is what sentence works. And if the flow isn't working, then maybe there's too many words. Like I've jam packed that sentence and it's about to burst. It's like, that's not working. So you start to remove things. And I always rework a lot of poetry. Like maybe there was one or two times, a very rare occasion, where I've just written something and I haven't edited it. And I'm like, wow, how did that come out? Like, that's mad. It's like I'm just a vessel for the ether, and all these words are coming through, and I'm just trying to get them out there. Do you know what I mean? Moments like that are crazy, but normally I'd rework something again and again and again. So,
What legacy do you hope that Life in Pieces will ultimately leave?
do you know what, man? It was like with social media, we're all on this journey to build followers and build fan bases, and we get all these numbers and we put all of these things onto a page. But it's like the thing, I always had this frightening fear that we're just tenants in a digital flat, and at any point we can get evicted, and everything we've worked for could just be gone. And I wanted to have my work and my journey on something that's a bit more tangible. And that's why I like the idea of a book, because one, it can help people get away from their phones, hopefully, and they can just take a little bit of a respite and relax, have a cup of tea, and just kind of, have a little moment for themselves. But also the idea that someone can physically hold it, like the smell of a book, you can't beat that. It can be on someone's shelf. It could be on a coffee table. Someone could say, "Oh, read this if you want," or, it's like I just wanted to be able to make my work a little bit more accessible to people, because a lot of people also weren't on social media, but they were interested in potentially reading some of the things that I've been working on. So the idea now that there's a physical copy of it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Waterstones, which I can't believe, that's mental. And now Audible as well, because I recorded it in my studio in Hampshire at the time, and Audible accepted it. So now it's like when people are like, "Oh, I don't have time to read your book," I'm like, "Don't worry, man, I'll do it for you." So it's the idea that I've read out every single piece from the book, so people could literally walk their dog, put it in their ear, and just kind of have a moment and go on a journey with me, and I'm speaking the way that I want it to be essentially heard, but yeah, I I like the idea, hopefully, that if one of those poems could change someone's life for the better, that would just be the most amazing thing in the world. The idea that some of the battles and things that I've gone through, that I've put on the page, that when somebody reads it and they're in a really dark headspace and they're like, I don't know if I want to see tomorrow. And then they read something. I go, do you know what? They've gone through this and they're potentially still here. So I can. Do you know what I mean? Um, yeah, maybe it can be a friend for people that are in the dark, and having the ability to be able to write and paint it in a way using words, can yeah can help other people that are going through that, and it's also, for me, having a book out there has helped me overcome dyslexia, because that was a big kind of trauma and cloud over one's head. And it was this idea that if you couldn't express yourself correctly, how do people see you, or how do people react to you? And the idea of being able to say, I wrote a book having dyslexia and dyscalculus and some of these complex things that I'm still dealing with on a kind of admin level when jobs require those things from you. It's helped me build up my confidence through words and vocabulary and grammar, and rather than being fearful of it, I've kind of just gone head first into the storm and gone, right, I'm gonna write a book. I'm going to publish a book. I'm going to get it out there. Like, these are words, and find all these big words, and it's amazing.
Drew, I think it'd only be fitting if you were to close today's episode with another one of your wonderful poems.
That's very kind indeed. Thank you. So this piece is called Right Through Me. Words fall from the sky, landing on the page, helping us wade through some of our darkest days. Now pages of pieces from our inner rage, caged up like wild animals. We can finally set them free, creating constellations with a mix of pain and poetry. My hands surrender to my brain's never-ending story. The words I'm truly grateful for that now flow right through me. My whole being becomes a vessel for words, as they lovingly hijack my mind, body and soul, stopping me in my tracks when they have something to say or a poem to console. Each verse is a blessing, not a curse. I don't mind my words whisking me far away, caught in the palms of paper. We write to set our pensive pains free and keep our demons at bay. Poetry for me isn't the points we can score. It helps to keep the wolves from the door, cleaning out our caves of deep embedded misery as it brings a smile to the inner child in me. Misspent time on a misspent youth. As the years swim by, we finally discover our truth. Pains we collect along the way like a detective gathering clues, never knowing the power they hold. Years later, as we pick our way back through, poetry lives deep inside me and many of you. The difference is we're the ones hanging on every word. Artistic outcasts, perhaps, our love and passion seen as absurd. Picking out every detail from our lives we willingly choose. Soaking up every moment in time, not a single second to lose. Pulling out our own heartstrings to create relatable truths. Poetry lives inside me in my endless dark, deep, mystical sea, dancing through my blood, fueling my passion, helping to keep my mind demon-free, painting with painful memories based on our reality. I never feel betrayed by poetry, because it's the one thing that truly knows me.
Drew, thank you so much for your time today. I actually want to come back to something you just said in that last poem, because I think it summarizes this episode really well. You said poetry lives in many of you without even realizing it. And I think that is such a great point, because, I've certainly got in my head, and I'm sure many people listening, that, well, we're not creative, we're not artistic, we wouldn't be able to kind of express in this way. But I think actually a lot of it does already exist inside of us, and we just need to get it out on a piece of paper, or as you were saying there, in other ways as well. And I think we could probably all surprise ourselves a little bit. And I think this is a really powerful way to start expressing how you're feeling and getting things out, as you were saying there before, without feeling like you necessarily have to sit down in front of someone and have a conversation. So thank you so much for your time today, Drew. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, dude. No, thank you so much for having us, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. And another thing I was going to say though is reading poetry helps as well, because I'd like to think the idea that people, potentially tuning into this episode, the fact that I reveal that I'm dyslexic, and if people were, like, wow, but that guy's writing poetry, how can, it's the idea that we overcome the things that we're potentially told. It's the thing with the bumblebee, right? Technically, scientists have realized the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly because of its wing size and how heavy it is, but nobody told the bee it can't fly. So it's the idea that no one said you can't be a writer just because, you don't have accolades on your walls. Writing doesn't have to be graded. It can be a personal thing. You go on a personable journey. So thank you so much, dude.
Thank you, Drew.